Today is a gift. You wake up in the morning, it's early, the alarm's going off, you don't want to get up, but today's a gift. Really, the likelihood of me being me right now is a miracle. And it could end in a moment's notice, and eventually it will end. Why not maximize the gift I've been given through that perspective and make today the greatest day of all time?
I am here with Nick Lavery, warrior, leader, speaker, author, active duty member of the U.S. Army Special Forces. He's a Green Beret and an absolute badass. And if you don't know who he is yet, you're going to love this story and you're going to love learning about him. In 2013, Nick's second combat in Afghanistan, he and his detachment fell victim to an insider attack. Yes, I said insider attack, which is such a betrayal, right? The worst. And ultimately, it resulted in the loss of his leg. Now, that didn't stop anything because following a year of surgeries and a whole lot of mindset and training and absolute digging in, he refused military medical retirement, and Nick set his sights on returning to operational status. In 2015, at the conclusion of a challenging, comprehensive assessment designed to evaluate Nick's abilities to operate, he returned to his detachment and was subsequently deployed once again to Afghanistan, conducting full spectrum combat operations. I'm honored to have you on the show. I'm honored for our listeners to be able to listen to a story like this, and I'm grateful for your dedication, not only to yourself, but to your country. Nick, thanks for joining me.
Scott, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate the time. I've been looking forward to this, man. So let's get into it.
Well, we talked a little bit before the show, and I think I told you I had a bunch of words, but I think it does a disservice if we don't at least tell a little bit about the moment that was defining. I mean, you became a Green Beret, and you're out there in Afghanistan. You're training the other side, the other team, so that they could take over, right? That's the mission. Walk us through 2013, and we're going to do a high level because every one of our listeners can go, they can watch your TEDx, they can watch any of the stuff out there and get even more detail, but I'd love the listeners to have an idea of what you battled with to really paint the picture of who you're becoming today.
Yeah, that's great, man. So we deployed in September of 2012 on a 6-month deployment. I was wounded 3 times in 3 separate instances during that same mission. First time, I took some grenade shrapnel to the back of my shoulder, blew about 11 size hole in me. Really wasn't all that big of a deal. Took me out of the fight for like 5-6 days. About 6 weeks after that was when I was wounded for the second time. I took an AK-47 round to the face. Not something you hear very often, right? Usually someone takes a round to the face. They're not alive to tell you that. So clearly I got very lucky. It grazed my face. It ripped me open. It bled a lot. It looked ugly, but what we would call scratch, particularly in comparison to what some of my friends were dealing with. Fast forward to March 11th, 2013, we have maybe 3 weeks left on this deployment before we're set to head home. And as you put, getting ready to go on a relatively large mission, a member of the Afghan local police, a unit that we had been working with, jumped up on the back of a Ford Ranger pickup truck and opened fire into me and my teammates with a belt-fed PKM machine gun from about 30 feet away. A devastating weapon system, even at extreme ranges. At that distance, it's a catastrophe, especially when we're all lumped together the way we were. An ideal time for an attack. This was a coordinated ambush, meaning that this guy was the initiation of this. However, at the same time, there were about 25 enemy fighters that had our compound essentially surrounded, that all began lobbing a machine gun and rockets on top of us. So 12 U.S. casualties on the ground, 3 of which were killed instantly or were dying alongside me, and then another 8 of my friends also wounded, in addition to about 7 or 8 or 9 Afghans that were either killed or wounded. In fact, this incident is considered the most catastrophic insider attack that we actually have on record. So a really bad day. Most of the damage to me was to my right leg. My femur was shattered into about 15 pieces. My femoral artery was cut. They estimated I took 4 or maybe 5 rounds just to my right leg alone. So my right leg was hammered meat. It looked like it had gone through a meat grinder or a shark had gotten a hold of it. Really bad day. I should have died that day, Scott. I should have died that day. And I imagine we'll talk faith and some stuff here in this conversation, but I should have died for all intents and purposes. After, a year at Walter Reed and getting back to the unit, and deciding in those moments that I was going back to doing what I do, that all roads from that initial point were able to go directly to the how. And that became my mission.
It became a mission. Now, he gave the shortened version. Inside of that shortened version, there's a part where he grabs a wad of like towels or something and shoves them up into that artery to stop it from bleeding. There's a part where you're being helicoptered to the second hospital, and they actually give you the wrong blood, so you code out. I mean, this is all pre-year. Then you get to the year where you battle, and they give you the ability to be a street fighter, as I heard it said, or just take it off at the hip, and you decided to fight again, which gave you the ability to potentially set yourself up for the future. And so what I want to know, and you mentioned this before, I heard you say that if you could narrow it down to one thing that got you through this, it was faith.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about what that logic was and what you leaned on during this process. And because I think mindset's important. It's all about perspective. And I want to get to perspective in a little bit, but when listeners are hearing this, all they're hearing is, sometimes people can separate themselves from who you are and what you did to who they are, and they're nothing like that. But the reality is you can find this in every day. With the right
100%.
mindset, with the right mentality.
100%. I love the way you put that. And us in the military, and particularly those of us in special operations, particularly over the last 20 years where we've been at the tip of this counterterrorism spear, is really, in my opinion, just an extreme example of what the mind and body are capable of, mostly based on the potential consequences of living within those environments. However, as you just put, man, these principles and these stressors and this adversity and these challenges, these exist regardless of your walk of life, regardless of what you do for a living or your circumstances. The mind is able to overcome these challenges irrelevant to the potential consequences. While that is there, I enjoy translating the fact that although we live this military, high octane, dangerous life, what makes us able to do it and successful at it is quite honestly a simple set of character traits and methodologies to train and tools that we leverage that are applicable to literally anybody. So I don't want people to get too starstruck by seeing the cool guy action photo with the guns and the kit on the mountaintop and being like, oh, well, that's him. He's a Green Beret. I'm an accountant, or I'm a sales rep, or I'm a truck driver. It's like, stop that. Stop. Do not let yourself go down that road with this like superhero complex, because it becomes a slippery slope, man, where all of a sudden these practices that you and I are going to talk about for the next 45 minutes to an hour become irrelevant to that individual because they are not, quote unquote, this or that or whatever. It's just all stop right there and then, right? Do not allow yourself to justify what we are preaching and what we are training and teaching because you are not X, Y, and Z. The word faith, man, powerful term. And I'll tell you briefly, I grew up mostly Irish Catholic, in church on Sundays. I went to a private high school, which is Jesuit high school, which is like extreme Catholicism, but the practice.
9 years of Catholic school, just so you know.
Oh, there you go.
I went kindergarten through 8th grade, altar server. I've been through, I just went to Sunday mass at Easter with my mom. She had the whole family. She cried for the first 20 minutes because we were all sitting in the same pew. It was powerful. I get it. I get where your background is.
Yeah, man. And, although that was a part of my life, the practice of religion was tough for me. And it just didn't take. I've considered myself to be a Christian, and, I have my beliefs in my God, but the practice of Catholic religion was tough for me. Going into this deployment I was pretty much in that same space. And where things began to change for me, it wasn't so much biblical, although it eventually got there. A definition of faith. which is a definition that I relied on daily for years, is a firm belief in something for which there is no proof. And you can apply that certainly to religion, like I have. I believe in a God, although there's no proof that that actually exists. Right? It's a belief, and I believe it to my core, and I have strong conviction in that belief. And it would be really difficult to convince me otherwise. I was able to apply that same term to my what I believe to be an inevitable outcome. I am going to do this. I'm going to reach the end of this road. I don't know with certainty that this exists, but I believe it enough in my heart that it does. And that is what fueled me to be able to continue to do the things that I needed to do, continue to get past the mistakes. And I think even more specifically and more importantly, manage the self-doubt and then the external doubt. Because again, man, this hadn't happened before. There had never been an above the knee amputee that had returned to a special forces team to go back into combat. So just like anyone who's trying to do something that's never been done before, a lot of people are going to be shaking their heads or, nodding and saying, dude, I don't know if what you're trying to do is real. But I was able to maintain that faith, and it safeguarded me from those external doubt that was coming in, even from people I loved and respected, because my faith was strong enough to do so.
Yeah, I get it. I think what's interesting about faith is it has so many different facets. Okay, let's take God and move that to the side strictly for the sense of having faith that you are controlling everything you can possibly control. And outside of that, you're placing it back to something higher than yourself. That alone, I think, allows us sometimes to just have that extra level or that extra energy, because you can only control what you can control. And you were doing more than what the average human could even do. I mean, what you came back from to even be able to go back into active duty, it's an interesting dynamic. What drove you for that? I mean, most people, in fact, probably everybody that goes to this goes to the, on average, in this particular instance, you were probably encouraged to go on military disability or to step away. What was that driving factor? So the faith helped you get through it. But what was the driving factor and that ambition to get back to where you were before?
Yeah. And to say people were suggesting that I move on to the next evolution of life would be somewhat of a dramatic understatement. The administrative street fight I found myself in with the Army that lasted about 8 months was quite significant. And I just had to simply refuse that answer multiple times. I would say at the core, Scott, of that question is two things. One is a passion for what I do, a genuine love for what I do. And when I use the word passion, I'm referring to a love of the game. Not so much a love of the prize, but a love of the journey, loving the process, which oftentimes includes doing things that I don't want to do, right? Passion, love, joy, happiness. These are different emotions. I love what I do, even in the times that suck, right? Even in the times that are difficult and I want nothing to do with it. I love earning my Green Beret every single day. And many of those days are really hard and include things I don't particularly like or want to do at that time. There's that. And then probably deeper and probably more significant is the purpose that I have with what I do, with my lifestyle. I was fortunate to kind of just stumble into that purpose, right? I mean, I came into the military because I was a 19-year-old kid in college watching the Twin Towers fall in New York, and I was really angry. And I was going to come in, do a 5-year minimum contract, get to the front of the fight, the tip of the spear, kick some ass, get some vengeance, and get out and figure out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. That was the game plan. Well, the problem is I fell in love with this, and I just simply couldn't imagine doing anything that would give me that same level of fulfillment. And by executing with repetition and with deliberate passion, I realized that this is who I am. This is my meaning in life. I am a warrior. I am a war fighter. I was put on this planet to pledge an allegiance to a society in which I will defend at all costs. So the calling, if you will, or the sense of meaning that I had behind my lifestyle, that is really at the core what enabled me to get back up off the ground after falling literally, figuratively, or metaphorically countless times every single day, when all the self-doubt and the questions are coming in, the fear and the pain and you know, the justifications and the excuses are just pouring in, usually on the offset of a failure or getting something wrong or having a really particularly hard day. This is who you are. All right. This is who you are, and this is what you do. All right. There is no plan B. There is no alternative. You have truly burned the boats because this is why you are put on this planet.
Yeah. And I guess finding that purpose and then pursuing it, regardless of the challenges that were put in front of you. And I want to say we're kind of mitigating the challenge. You were, your right leg was amputated. You spent a year. I mean, most of us, you know, people struggle. I've had conversations with friends recently that struggle just to spend a weekend with family members. And, you know, when you spend a year doing something, fighting for something, and it's your own life, your ability to go back to something you believe in and you find so much purpose in, it's so powerful to be able to take that to that next level. So can you walk us through, I have two questions. Number one, just the mindset and maybe what you did to pass the time. And the second thing is, and you could choose to answer either one at any time, but I feel like a lot of people miss purpose in their life. And I wonder if because you were fighting for your country, your drive to make a difference was so big that sometimes if you love that, the purpose is like, man, I'm not only defending the country, I'm defending freedom. I'm providing a way of life. I am a part of something so much bigger than myself. And the accountant and the truck driver and all the people we mentioned earlier, maybe they don't feel like they're making that big of a difference, but the reality is everybody has that part in their life. So I think your mindset and your passing of that time during that year is interesting, and it might lead to the second part of that question.
Yeah, I'll start with the second one, man, because you can define purpose in probably several different ways. I would find it hard to determine a purpose that didn't better serve somebody else outside of you. Is it possible? Probably. I would argue that that would be really hard to do. Purpose meaning what kind of impact are you creating on others? That's how I interpret purpose.
Right.
Hence my lifestyle as a service member. I mean, the word service is literally in the title. I happen to be in the military. Those in which we serve is a nation, right? And the members of the society, but also more granular is my teammates. Right? I serve them. I create an impact on them, but it's outward, right? My work, my purpose is in service to others, and at the micro level, it's the 11 other guys around me on my detachment, and then you can obviously scale that out. You can zoom out to and look at the United States as a whole. I know for me, when I first came in, it had nothing to do with my teammates. I didn't have any teammates. I came in. It was about the macro. It was about America. It was about the red, white, and blue. And how dare you do this? And I'm coming over there to make you pay. And then once I began doing it, that purpose and that therefore that impact began to hone in and get a lot more narrowed. I still had that same Star Spangled Banner flowing through my veins, but it became more acute. And that's just what it took for me to continue to do all the really hard things, whether that was training or we were going on a really difficult operation that it looked like some of us may not come back. I had to look these 11 other guys in the eyes and be like, my purpose is to serve you, and I'm going to do that to the absolute maximum possible ability that I have. I think you said, how did you pass the time? And I'm not coming down on you. That's a dangerous quote. Or dangerous use of words. I'd say when people are looking to find ways to pass the time, I feel like there are a variety of missed opportunities. I'll use an example as an injury. Whether you lose your leg or you sprain your ankle, or you get a torn, ACL, or you sprain your wrist. Like most of us that live even remotely active, whether that's for our job or a hobby or a passion or whatever, like you get an injury and it's a buzzkill, right? Like it's like, oh my gosh, you just think about how horrible things can be. And that can be negative for quite a bit of time. I think people tend to miss what is to be gained by this. And there are certainly things you can do to pass the time until, let's say, your knee is healed. It's going to take 6 months for the surgery and the recovery. And like, okay, I can find tons of things to do to prevent myself from getting bored. I could do that. I could read. I could do like a million other things that don't require the use of my, let's say, left leg. However, you've also been given a gift. You've been given an opportunity. This is an opportunity that you can choose to leverage. You can bide the time doing anything, but what you could also do is triple down on the things that you can do and make those areas of your life incredibly stronger to then be able to continue on past the point of your knee being back to 100%. Meaning the things that the adjustments that you've made during this downtime are able to transcend beyond the injury. So if my left knee's down, let's say I can now, great, I don't have to do leg day at all. I'll just use that as an example. I'm going to make my upper body insane strong. If I just look at this through the physical lens, this is going to be great. I'm going to adjust my training program, my split. I'm going to figure out how I can train my chest 3 days a week or my shoulders or whatever. I'm going to modify this. That'll be fun. I'll learn stuff about anatomy, human exercise physiology. I'll get into kinesiology. I'll figure out how I can maximize the next 6 months to make my upper body insane strong or big or whatever. Well, what you just learned and then did, fast forward 6 months to when the knee's back and you're good to go with doing whatever you were doing, you can maintain what you've gained, both knowledge and actual progress, now moving forward once you're back to 100%. So for me, that exact concept I just described is the way I went about it. Fortunately, I was able to do it pretty early with some help of some amazing nurses and doctors at Walter Reed and physical therapists, because I'm laying there laid up. My right leg is being incrementally amputated piece by piece by piece, sometimes 3 or 4 days out of the week, over and over and over again as they were fighting the infection that was eating my leg. I couldn't do anything for myself, Scott. I mean, and I'm a hard charger, hyper type A personality. I'm the guy you call when there's a problem, and now I need help with everything. I was completely dependent, and that's tough in itself. One of the PTs came in and said, well, what can you do? You're laying here, you're laid up. What can you do? And you know what I did? I just raised my left leg up off the bed. That's all I did. I just engaged my hip flexors and lift my left leg up. And she's like, okay, well, you can do that. You don't need any help to do that. And it was like a light switch went off. And I said, you know what? I'm going to triple down on the things that I can do. And I'm just going to gradually test the things that I currently can't. So then it was, I'm going to do 500 left leg raises today. Tomorrow, I'm going to do 750. The next day, I'm going to do 1,000. So not only was I getting physical benefits out of physical training, as minor as that was, it was more about where I was able to place my mentality into something productive that not only bided the time, and I'm kind of breaking your balls a little bit about this, but I just think it's important to know.
It's the perfect.
I was biding time, but I was actually adding physical and mental and strategic value to myself longer term. And these are practices now that I still maintain today. This is over a decade ago, man. This is stuff I still maintain today.
Yeah. You know, what's beautiful about it is I appreciate it, because ultimately where I was getting at is most people, when something goes wrong and they have a schedule, they have a discipline, they have a workout they do every day, they sprain their ankle. They're like, I can't run anymore. And you're like, all right, well, what you just did was passing the time was a basic level question. But the reality was I was aiming for how the mindset got there, how you actually shifted it. And so you took a shitty question and turned it into something really awesome, which I'm grateful for, because believe it or not, your answer was what I was searching for, because I've heard you talk a little bit about this before. And the switch it was really about gratitude. It was about strengths. It was about strengths. It was about focus on the things I can control and the things I can't control. And then diving into it, you make everything stronger. So many people, I think, focus on what they're weak at. A lot of people walk into a situation, they're like, I'm not good at X. And all they do is saturate their brain on what they're not good at. When if we just focus on what we are great at, you and I both talked about the tech before we started this. And I'm like, I'm not good at this, but someone else is, and they make my job so much easier, because all I have to do is what I'm great at or what I'm good at or maybe above average at. And I feel like what you were describing was exactly what I was talking about. The other point that I want to go back on was so crucial is so many times when and think about young people. Okay. we're close to the same age. That was impactful. September 11th was impactful to everybody that witnessed it. I worked for the attorney generals at the time in Virginia. I was at crime prevention, and I was hunkered down in an IT room. I had become friends with all the IT guys. We're the only ones that had a TV, minus the like the public relations team. And so I know it sounds crazy, but it was a long time ago. And so when phones, you weren't getting that on your phone back then. And
Right.
so I remember watching, I remember the impact. But when you talk about purpose, right? Most people and young people that we meet today that struggle with purpose have not made the mental shift to somebody other than themselves. So you highlighted this, and that was the best part that I just wanted to make sure our listeners heard, because when you go back and you say, I was serving my country first, like it was bigger than me right out of the gate. Then it became serving my team, being the best teammate I could be. And it became all about somebody else. Purpose is found and impact is found when it's outside of ourselves. When it's inside of ourselves, it's lost. And I think that's the challenge, is that when we're young, we're kind of driven towards, I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to do this. And when I turns to we, it elevates in a whole different level. And you just nailed that. So I love that. I mentioned gratitude. You lit up at gratitude. I want to give you a second to kind of talk through that and what your brain was going through when I mentioned that word.
Yeah, let me just put a bow on this purpose and impact and outward expression thing through an example. When I began my journey back, starting, let's just put it in the intensive care unit in Walter Reed, and the decision was made there, I'm going back to the team, I'm going back to doing what I do. It was all about me doing what I needed to do for myself. It was about me proving the naysayers wrong, me proving myself right, me making the enemy regret not killing me when they had the chance, about me stepping off that bird back in Afghanistan with my arms over my head, saying, hey, I'm back. That's what drove me for over a year. And I'm grateful for that, because it got me through a lot of really difficult times. You mentioned in the intro, my unit eventually put me through this, what ended up being 12 weeks of assessments and tests to determine if I could go back to the team life. And I was about halfway through that assessment phase. So about 6 or so weeks in, I got a lot of momentum. I'm feeling confident. I've knocked out 12 or so different tests and evaluations. I'm flying high. I'm like, bring on the next thing. Like, let's go. I wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, panic, realizing that I'm going back to a team. And I had not thought about them a single time during this process. I was so narrow focused, hyper obsessed on me doing what I knew I needed to do that I couldn't see anything else outside that. And at first, when this happened, this epiphany happened to me, I felt an enormous wave of guilt. And it like was really challenging. The rest of the night, forget about it. I go into work the next day and I grab my teammates. And what's crazy is these guys were around me the entire time. It's not like I was on this island by myself training and working. These guys were in the gym together, we're training together, we're doing things together. I was working as an instructor and they were doing the team life, but we were real close daily. I went into work and I was like, guys, I haven't thought about this once and I feel horrible about it. So first off, I apologize. Second, have you guys thought this through? I mean, you're in my corner, you're supporting me every day, you're cheering me on, we're getting after it in the gym. And I keep telling you, I'll be back, I'll be back, I'll be back. And you're saying, yeah, man, let's go, let's get there. But have you guys actually thought this through? Or do you just care about me so much that you want me to be happy and fulfilled? But I need the no shit objective analysis here, because this is a team and I cannot come back to this environment even in the realm of being a liability. It will not work. And they're like, listen, bro, first off, don't apologize. You've been completely obsessed now for over a year, which I think is the place you need to be to even have a shot at making this thing real. And then number two, we've already talked about this dozens of times. The answer is we don't know if this is going to work, but we want to be the ones to decide. So if by some chance you are able to make it back here to us, we will, without question, be the first to tell you, whether that's on day 1 or day 5 or year 3, hey man, like this isn't going to work anymore. So I was able to put my trust and faith into those guys to have that objective view and that they would be the ones to approach me if necessary to be like, hey man, this doesn't look like it's working. They enabled me to stay hyper focused and obsessed on the end state. But what that did to this point is, although I was already operating at an insane capacity, training 3-4 times a day, out of my mind, rigid lifestyle down to the minute, when I began thinking about them going into that fourth workout for the day, when I'm exhausted and I'm beat up and every single justification is starting to sound really convincing in that moment of weakness, rather than me thinking about getting off the plane with my arms in the air, I was thinking about my teammate's 5-year-old son. I was thinking about my teammate's wife. I was thinking about my teammate getting wounded in action and me needing to be the guy to get him out. What that did for me was take someone who was already operating at a high level and surge it even beyond that. I was in a stratosphere of productivity and mental focus. So that impact aspect, when leveraged, will accelerate you to another dimension of what you can do in productivity.
Yeah, I mean, you had to be obsessed. You had to be hyper focused. There is nobody that's ever done something truly great and almost impossible. I mean, if you think about it, just think of Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan's excessive obsession on basketball made him as great as he is, right? It's amazing. But sometimes what's interesting about what you just described is you took that obsession and you shifted it. You were self-aware. You noticed it, that you were going in a trek of controlling what you could control, but then expounding upon it and going, wow, if I add the team to this, I need to add this. And these guys gave you the truth. They said, we got your back, but if you can't handle it, we're going to tell you can't handle it. That gave you even another level. And it's such a powerful point. And, it makes you think about perspective. And I mentioned this earlier in the conversation, and I think you have a different perspective, but it makes everything else. It's the stupidest example is this morning, I study for these and I do research and I evaluate every single interview that we're doing, and something went wrong at the house and I was frustrated. I was running late. I had something go wrong and I'm like trying to go on the garage door to fix it. And literally in my brain, I'm like, dude, I'm interviewing a guy today that lost a leg from a machine gun from a guy he actually trained. And I'm getting ticked off about the garage door not opening. Perspective is the simplest, stupidest thing, but it was actually being inside your brain enough to go, hey, there are so many other things in our lives that we need to be paying attention to. And if we want to truly be the best version of ourselves, having that different perspective is so valuable. Tell me about your perspective and how it shifted over the course of I don't need you to go all the way back, but just tell me about the progression to where you are today, because that's got to be powerful.
Yeah, it is, man. And you mentioned the word gratitude just a second ago, and that's going to tie into this. There's an expression out there: comparison is the thief of joy, and I've got difficulties accepting that. I understand where it comes from, right? Use the cliche social media, and people are aimlessly scrolling and people are showing the filtered 37th attempt at the greatest possible photo from the greatest angle with the yacht and the things, and by comparing yourself to them, you can allow it to make you miserable. So through that lens and using it that way, comparison can be the thief of joy. However, with perspective will come comparison. You just outlined an example. All right. Right. Perspective and comparison are interwoven within each other. One will give you the other. You're having a tough time with your garage door. You're angry. You're pissed off. You're whatever. And you're like, oh man, I'm talking to this guy, Nick, who's been through some stuff. This is a silly thing to be upset about. You're comparing that moment in time to something else. And it is allowing you to let it go and be like, this is silly. Well, what really enables that, and you may say yes or no, is the gratitude that can come with it. So if you combine perspective, therefore some comparison, with gratitude, you've just weaponized that comparison. You've weaponized that perspective, because it's through that, if you choose to focus on what you are grateful for, can actually drive you. It can actually be a positive tool to take advantage of. You can say in that garage example, you're like, this is annoying, but I'm grateful that I have both my legs, or like whatever it was. I didn't get, I wasn't in, 100 gunfights and I watched my friends die. Some extreme morbid stuff. But the point is that the gratitude can take the frustration away and say, this is silly. I'm thankful that this is my greatest problem right now, because it's really a non-problem. So my progression through that, it started really because I should be dead. And I said that. And I've been surrounded by death for a really long time now. I've been on all sides of it. All right. I've been as close to it gets. I've been alongside it, and I've administered it. I know with certainty how precious life is and how fast it can come to an end. This is a gift that we have here. And there's some really interesting statistics that will demonstrate that, but it's essentially a miracle. It's as close to the definition of a miracle as it gets, meaning something that is essentially impossible without divine intervention is you being you right now. It's like 1 in 800 trillion, or like something insane, depending on how far back you want to go. If we choose to recognize that life is a gift, one that will eventually end, there are a few certainties we have in this world. That is one of them. This is going to end. I'm grateful that I'm here now. You can leverage that to the absolute nth degree. All right. Now, for me, I'm on borrowed time again, because it should have ended for me over 10 years ago. What that has given me is an incredible gift, a powerful gift of perspective, that not only every day matters, man, but every moment matters. And you can zero this in to as tight of a shot group as you can mentally manage. Maybe it's just at the day level. Like today is a gift. You wake up in the morning, it's early, the alarm's going off, you don't want to get up, but today's a gift. Really, the likelihood of me being me right now is a miracle. And it could end in a moment's notice, and eventually it will end. Why not maximize the gift I've been given through that perspective and make today the greatest day of all time? Or at least make this a day that progresses me towards something that matters to me, hence impact, purpose. Let's not waste this moment in time. Let's take full advantage of what I've been given.
Yeah, that's powerful. And when you talk about making every moment count, it's actually something that you had to do during the obsessive state, where you said that you would even count your steps because you knew that your leg would get sweaty and you'd have to make adjustments and change. And in order to do what you wanted to get done, you could only have, this was 8 wasted steps, 12 wasted steps, whatever it is. Flip that around now. To each one of those steps is a powerful moment. Each day, it's that Tim McGraw song, Live Like You Were Dying. If you listen to that song, you listen to the words, and you listen to the point and perspective, is each day, each moment is so powerful. And you have obviously, anytime you face death, someone that's faced it in the way that you had, and to your point, should be dead according to everything that's written. It's just such a powerful perspective, and it makes the word, it's just a word, right? Perspective's a word, and it could be used for something as stupid as a garage door, or it could be used on living each day in a more powerful way and taking someone's story. What I was doing was just remembering that my mission, my purpose, my life is so much bigger than the stupid moment when you let something angry or frustrating get in front of you. It's just a powerful moment to be self-aware, to almost step outside of yourself and watch it happen. And the older we get, the easier that gets. The more you start to see yourself. The other night, my best friend from high school came over. We were having dinner. My wife she makes unbelievable steaks, and she had put some steaks in the broiler in the oven, and I had walked in and she overcooked the steaks. And I was like, steaks are always good. You cook steaks great every time. Like, I'm trying. And my buddy and I get in the car, and we're driving back, or we're standing at the car, finishing our bourbon before we go watch my kid's soccer game, which is a great dad example.
Of course. But perfect.
I would think of Good Will Hunting. It was Ben Affleck and Matt Damon right there. But I said, by the way, you saw the growth there, right? I just fell on my sword and was totally like, I just kept throwing nothing but positivity, no matter how many things I was getting, because the bottom line is, the perspective was 20 years ago, I'd have been like, what? how did this happen? Like, you never do this. Like, why do you, like a stupid kid? Today,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, how blessed am I? What an awesome meal. What a grateful time. My friend's here. My wife's amazing. Like, just flipping that perspective is such a powerful word. And gratitude is the root of it. And I completely agree with your point and couldn't agree more.
Dude, this is, I want to make this extremely clear. What you and I are talking about right now, this is a skill. All right. This is a skill. This is something that is learned through deliberate reps, just like getting good at shooting free throws or shooting a rifle. It's done through purposeful practice. This doesn't just come automatic to all of us. Some may have some character traits, personality traits, nature, nurture, a combination of both that enable us to do this a little bit better. But this is very much a skill. All right. The skill really is the time that exists between the initial reaction and then your response. So let's use the garage door thing, right? Because I'm faced with these moments in time just about every single day, right? I go pull in the Dunkin' Donuts drive-thru to get a coffee, and there's like 15,000 cars there. And I'm like, oh my God, are you killing me? Like, I can't get out. I'm blocked in traffic. I'm going to be late for work. I just want my coffee. What are you people doing? Don't any of you have jobs? Like, I'm losing my mind because I want my coffee. Well, you could kind of say, hey, man, you've spent like years in some of the most austere, horrible environments in the world for months and months at a time where they have never even heard of a Dunkin' Donuts drive-thru, and you were just fine. How is this bothering you? Well, because I'm a human being, and my initial reaction to something bad or frustrating or annoying is present almost exclusively every time. Like, that initial reaction is going to happen. The garage door, the Dunkin' Donuts drive-thru, whatever. The time difference between that reaction and then your actual response, that's the skill. And it's within that window that when you enable what we're talking about, right? Gratitude, perspective, saying, you know what, let me just stop for a second. Let me detach from this emotional moment I'm in and look at this from 30,000 feet and say, this is silly, right? I'm in America. No one's shooting at me. I'm about to get a coffee. It's going to be great because it's Dunkin' Donuts, right? But that's the skill that we're talking about. It's not removing the reaction. It's shortening the time between the reaction and your response. And this comes through just deliberate effort and purposeful practice. So for your listeners out there, and I'm reminding myself of this because this was probably going to happen to me in the next 15 minutes. I got 2 young boys. They're out of their minds. Walk into your next frustration, for one, knowing it's coming. It's inevitable. It is en route to you right now. You just don't know what it is and when it's going to show up. But next time it does, stop, detach, take a look at it from 30,000 feet, launch weaponized gratitude into yourself and into that moment, and then deliberately control your response to that.
Yeah. And you know what the other powerful part to that is, folks? We have to actually be willing to admit that we failed or we failed in the past to get to that point. The self-awareness of knowing what the old version of you would do and the new version of you will do instead is part of that journey. If you think you're never wrong and we think we've never, it's always someone else's fault, the blame game comes in, it's total bullshit. Because the reality is it starts with self-awareness to identify that we have a problem we want to work at. And by working at it, it's like leadership. Leadership is a learned skill, right? It's something that I think a lot of, I was a leader on the playground at 6 years old. I was a leader in a lot of ways, but I was never the leader that you need when things get tough. I needed to be way better. I needed to learn. And so when you start learning and building off of those things, you're self-aware. Hey, I failed at this. Maybe I could do better. Instead of challenging someone, when I make a leadership decision, sometimes if someone challenges it, I'm listening today to go, what else do you think I could have done differently? And I'm open-minded enough to say, I might change that next time because I've now taken it and used it in a different spot. And by the way, I've never been in a dunk line in Massachusetts or anywhere in the Northeast where everybody wasn't yelling at you as you got through. So it's almost part of getting a Dunkin' Donuts coffee is almost part of screaming at somebody for actually don't lose it all. The other person, you have 2 young boys. How old are your boys?
One just turned 6 today and the other is 2.
Mine turned 14 and 17 in a couple weeks.
Wow.
So
God bless you.
yeah, I don't know a
Amazing.
whole lot at all, but it's amazing. I fly a lot, and I'll tell you something I tend to do, and you'll find yourself doing this. But anytime you're away and you're on that flight and you're looking back, I go back and I look at the pictures from years ago, and it's
Yeah.
like oh my, and I remember conversations we had, and I remember how tough I was on them, or how strong I was about a certain thing that we had to do. And it all just melts away. And you see this picture of this child that's nothing like who they are today. Both my boys are getting man faces. Well, one is a man, he's 17, but the
Yeah.
other is now converting. And it goes
Wild.
so fast. And that
It's
is
crazy.
the ultimate perspective, because it
Yeah.
weakens you
Yeah.
in a
So
positive
true.
way.
Yeah. Kids will do that to you, man. And go down the family road all day here, but I'll just, people ask, what's the most difficult challenge you've had, and you've done all these things, and what are you most appreciative of or most proud of, accomplishment? And I'm like, both of those answers, greatest challenge and greatest accomplishment, both exist in the realm of me as a father, without question. It's the hardest job I've ever had, and I've been tasked to do some really difficult things. I've tasked myself to do some really difficult things. It's the most hardest job I've had, but it's also by a mile the most rewarding job I've ever had. And you want to talk about perspective, like you just said, bro, that will wildly change things. In the moment you're holding that little slug for the first time, everything that seemed to be the most important things in the world to me all of a sudden just didn't matter. And
Gone.
that's a moment in time, and think priorities change and things move around, but it does give you a punch to the face gift of perspective. And you want to talk about purpose and impact, and you bring kids into the life, man, and it'll change in a lot of amazing, great ways.
It's a glue. It's a glue to the family. It's a glue to everything you do. It's also a major challenge, like you said, because you want them to become strong. You want them to become, good humans at the very root. You want them to be good humans. The founding father said, "We are soldiers, so our children can be teachers, so their children can be artists." And then
Great quote.
we know what happens to the generation of artists. You need soldiers again normally, because everyone forgets, where it comes from. But the point is that the kids, I provide a different life than I grew up with for my children, as you will for yours. And it's interesting to see the depths of how that works. I did an interview the other day, and we talked about this. Just pay attention as a dad. Something that I found just from a perspective standpoint. I put my shoes where they're not supposed to be in our house, according to my wife, every day. And I've done it for, I don't know, 15 years. I don't know what it is. I take them off, I put them right here, and I do it every day. From that one mistake, quote unquote, that I make, here's what's happened. Number one, the first thing I've recognized is that my sons have followed me. And so my boys put their shoes in the exact same spot, to the point where today my wife has actually gotten a little stool thing that sits right there so we can all put our shoes on top of it. So she's been defeated by the three of us. But here's which is a great story. But here's the most powerful part. Watching the size of the shoes grow every year.
Yeah.
My 17-year-old shoes are 2 sizes bigger than mine today. I can't fit my shoes in the spot sometimes when he puts 2 pairs there, because his feet have gotten so big. So not only did they follow my example, but they also have grown. And it's almost like I'd be walking out of the house and I would just look down in a rush, and I'd see those shoes and I'd be like, oh man, it's going by fast. They're bigger already. And so it's something I hope, if you take anything out of this conversation, it's something with the 2 kids that's really powerful. And I like talking about family, especially ending in and around family, because the who's in our life are really the ultimate purpose. And when we can provide something bigger than ourselves and serve our family, it is a powerful thing. And being a dad is not easy. And there's a lot of dads and moms out there listening that can actually understand. But your story is one that I think is so powerful that I hope you continue to share it everywhere. I look forward. Tell us about what you see in the future. What does the future look for you right now? You're still serving, you're still active duty. What does the future look like? What do you want to be doing into the future?
Yeah, man, I appreciate you asking. And I find myself in an extremely blessed position, man. Not only have I been living the last 16 years doing something professionally in which I love, I've already determined and found what my next purpose is beyond service in the uniform. And I have an opportunity, and I have been working towards that now as a passion project, nights and weekends. And it's really, you know, the same overall end state. It's a life of service, just it's through a different mechanism. And it's in the realms of consulting, instructing, keynotes, workshops. You know, I published my first book last year. I'm working on another 2 of them. Now there it is, Objective Secure. I'm a horrible PR person because I never plug my own stuff ever.
Because it feels like weakness. It hurts. It's the worst part of doing all this.
I'm tough
is that you have to like it, and you can't do it unless you go push it. It's the most uncomfortable thing for any achiever. It's like, hey, look at me, look at me. You spent your whole life getting away from that. And then the only way to get it out there is like, hey, look at me. I need your help.
It's tough, man. It's tough. I'd say it's tough for everybody, or most of us anyway, particularly service members, and then particularly guys like that are in special operations. And we live this quiet professional lifestyle and mentality. So to turn and stop moving in the direction of a public figure and an entrepreneur that has to do marketing and branding, this is all stuff I'm learning on the fly and getting wrong a whole bunch of times. But that is what my future looks like. And I've been in a position now for the last, 12 or so months where I've been doing it now, kind of building that foundation, building the framework, surrounding myself with people, as you and I have talked earlier, that are better than me, far better than me in a lot of other ways. So assembling a community around myself of like-minded individuals that are also passionate about providing that impact and positive influence to the world, and watching that grow. So, I got 4 more years of active duty service. I'm in a relatively new position now. I left the team life about 6 months ago, which was a really difficult transition just in itself. So now I'm at the company level in a leadership position. So I got a lot to learn there. It's exciting. It's surprisingly fulfilling. You leave the team life, you leave the kicking down the doors thing, but your span of influence will broaden because now I have more that are within my sphere of influence. And that's not something to take lightly. So I got a lot more work to do in the uniform. And when able, deliberate time management and time prioritization, I'm able to build out now what my life looks like, post military service.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell everyone listening right now, watch out, because what you're able to accomplish, from the challenges presented to the mindset that you have to the service that you provided both the country, your family, and yourself, we're all grateful for. I'm grateful for the time that we had. Everybody should go follow you on Instagram and any of the social media platforms, anything that you have out there to get the book. The book, again, is Objective Secure, and you can find it anywhere. I got it right on Amazon. And, maybe the way to make it easy is not all of us served, but how we can serve is when some of our humble leaders that did serve us and serve us in a big way for the country are out there and they are promoting. Let's remember to have that extra like, that extra share, that extra moment to help somebody. That's something that a lot of men they struggle with. I have more men come up and say, dude, I watch your videos, or I listen to that thing, or I saw that speech or presentation. I'm so grateful. That was awesome. And I'm like, man, I didn't even know you like my stuff. Oh yeah, I don't like anything. I don't share anything. Like, we guys don't do that. Like,
pride, ego, so comfortable.
It's crazy. So step out of your comfort zone and share the shit that's good, so more people can find good humans like this. So Nick, I'm blessed and grateful to have you here. Your story's amazing. Thank you for sharing it with the listeners, and thanks for being a part of the show.
I appreciate the time, man. It's been fun talking, and congratulations on the new journey, brother. You got a fan here for life, man. So enjoy the ride, and I know you'll be taking it seriously, man. I'm looking forward to watch you grow. Congrats.
Thanks, brother. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you liked it, there's more where this one came from. Click here and enjoy some more.